Service mapping can feel like a complex black box. There are tags, discovery flows, credentials, and entry points. And if you miss one step, the whole map can fall apart. But here's the good news. Service mapping doesn't have to be mysterious. And in this video, I'm going to take you through the full journey of service mapping, step by step, using real platform screenshots and diagrams. And by the end of this session, you'll understand the different types of service mapping. You'll walk through the discovery flow from top to bottom, and you'll see how credentials and entry points come together to build an accurate and reliable service maps. And before we dive in, let me just say this to you. If you want more deep dives into IT operations, discovery, and automation, make sure you subscribe to this channel and join as a member so you can not miss the next world truth. Okay, then let us get started. Let's start with the basics on what I'm sharing now on your screen are the different types of service mapping. Here on my screen, you can see the three major approaches. The first one on the left, where you see is tag-based or tag-based mapping. This is the latest way to gain business context at scale because it uses metadata from different environments. It can be from virtualization, cloud, or container technologies. Essentially, it piggybacks on existing tags that are already applied to your workloads, and that's make it quick and effective for broad environments. And if you want to see live service mapping using tag-based, I created a full video with a full demonstration that you'll find at the end of the screen. The second approach is automated service suggestions, and this is powered by machine learning. This one is about speed and accuracy combined. The system uses entry points and traffic patterns to automatically suggest meaningful connections. And later on, as I do a demo about the top-down based service mapping, it will make sense to you on how the traffic patterns are created and how also machine learning is doing its job to ensure the correct mapping is established. Machine learning service mapping is having a smart assistant that watches the traffic and says, these are the components look like, and they belong to the same service. And finally, as we go to the right, we have the top-down approach. This is where things get really deep. The top-down method is surgical. It's not about speed, it's about accuracy. It's what you use for mission-critical services where you need to be absolutely certain that every dependency, every application, and every database is mapped correctly. So what we're trying to say is all the components of an application and its relationship to that specific initiative are all mapped out in a single point of view. While tag-based gives you quick wins, machine learning helps you to scale, but top-down ensures that you can trust the service map when it really matters. And that's the flow we're going to dive into the next slide. Now let's take a closer look at the top-down discovery flow. So at the very top, we begin with the service entry point. And you can see that there is a URL or an endpoint that defines the start of your service. From there, the system asks a simple but powerful question. Does the host record exist inside your CMDB? So if the answer is yes, it does exist in the CMDB. Now the system can now move forward, and if the answer is no, then it launches what's called the host discovery process. This process uses detection methods, scanning, classification, identification, and exploration to figure out exactly what's running on that host. And if you're not familiar of ITOM discovery on the different process steps that I just mentioned, I also added it at the end of the screen to allow you to give full context of a discovery process. Now, if the discovery succeeds, we create a new configuration item inside the CMDB. And if it fails, the process stops right there. And this is important behavior that I'd like you to fully understand because top-down discovery is quite technical and difficult to understand. That's why I created this process flow to give you a firm foundation on how the top-down discovery works. So the ServiceNow process or system doesn't guess. It either validates if the configuration item or the CI is there, or it holds if there's any failure inside the process. So the failure may cause, or the root cause of the problem can be, or most of the time, credentials. And if you don't have access to a specific CI or a network domain, then the population of the CI, which is the component of the service map, will not be complete. Now, next is like the flow moves into the reconciliation engine. This is where records are updated or created. So this is a rule engine inside the CMDB. It ensures there's one consistent source of truth. If there's any duplicates created, it gets resolved and any changes are also captured. So you have a full of the source, the version, and the rule set that ensure if there's a new C will be created and if it's an existing CI and it will be updated. From there, the mapping process continues into the identification section. This is where pattern matching happens. For example, if the system detects a web server or a database, it checks against patterns to validate and update the application record. To give you a quick picture what a pattern is, in a less technical term, it is a protocol or an object to verify what is the type that we are basically communicating. So as a high level, we mentioned web server or a database server, but it can be an SAP application, an Oracle application, and so on. And as I do a demo later on, you will fully understand what are the different patterns to identify the different sections or components that builds up a configuration item. And finally, there's a connection verification. This ensures that connections between services are real and valid. If the connection is confirmed, the service mapping continues. If not, the process stops. The entire flow ensures accuracy at every stage. So any dependencies from a web server, it could be an appliance, and it could be moving to a queuing server, depending on how your application components are established. No assumptions, no blind spot, just a structured process from an entry point to a verified map. And before we move forward, let me pause and ask, if this flow is clicking for you, type the words mapping flow down in the comments. That way I know you're following along, and it also helps other viewers find this video. Plus, if you'd like me to show a live lab demo of this exact process in action, let me know in the comments as well. And now let us shift gears so you can see a live demo of this full process. All right, so we've looked at the types of mapping and the flow, but none of this works without one critical foundation. This is the credentials, and as we navigate to the application navigator and going down to the service mapping module, you will have the credentials. And as we move to the top right, let's create a new one. And as you can see, the credentials workspace in the platform. And each line here represents an authentication method. Windows credentials, SSH keys, SNMP, communities, API tokens, and many others. Without these credentials, Discovery simply can't connect to your infrastructure. They are the keys that unlock your servers, your databases, your applications, and your devices. And ServiceNow has made it easy for you to ensure the correct patterns, fields, and forms depending on the authentication type is already established even prior for you coming in. So it gives you a guide and a template to ensure that you're meeting the correct prerequisites in creating the credentials. Let's drill down into creating a new Windows credentials. You'll notice it asks for the basics like name, username, password. These credentials get tied to mid servers as one of the examples so they can be used automatically during discovery runs. Once saved, they're reusable across all discovery jobs. And if you are basically accessing a specific CI, and this is where you also store the credentials. It could be a Windows server, and on the previous tab, it could be an appliance, a Linux server, and so on. So the takeaway here is simple: no valid credentials, no CI, and no discovery. And if you don't have the correct rights, then you will not have access to the attributes of the configuration item that you're trying to discover. Service mapping is only as strong as the keys you provided. This is why setting up and testing your credentials should always be your first step before diving into mapping. And let us go back to the credentials tab. And as we drill down to one of the credentials that we have created earlier, and as we test the credential, pointing it to a specific IP address and a port and using a mid server, then it will allow us to communicate to the target CI, which is this IP, and ensure that we have the correct rights in communicating to this CI that we will be using for our example service map. So for those of you who are not familiar on what the mid server can do, I have added a lesson of how the mid server works together with item discovery at the end of the screen. And as we continue and click OK, you will notice that it will start to communicate to the provided IP address and verify if working or not. Now, as we have verified the credentials, let us now navigate to the service mapping home. And as we drill down to service mapping home, where you open the service mapping workspace, you'll see a dashboard where candidate services can be mapped, fixed, approved, or viewed. These candidates are the system suggestions for where a service might begin. From here, you have multiple options. You can view the candidate list, import a service map, or a list of service maps. You've already got one defined, or create a single service map manually. Adding a new entry point is straightforward. And as we basically drill down to additional options, then we could define a single service map manually. This is where you define the business service, the owner, and then you add the entry point type. And this is where it gets flexible. You can define a web application, a SAP, an Exchange service, a Citrix app, a SharePoint, a WebSphere MQ, you name it. And this is one of the few capabilities of the service map. If we add a web application as an example, the form will ask for the full URL, the host name, and any optional comment. And once that's saved, Discovery knows exactly where to begin. Entry points are critical because they set the stage for everything else. They tell the system this is where my service begins, and now go and map everything connected to it. Without accurate entry points, the entire map risks of being incomplete or misleading. Now, as we add the example URL and click add, it will take you to a place where it will start discovering the configuration item which you are seeing right now. Since I already done it earlier, what you'll experience, normally it will start with this entry point here and start navigating to the IP address or discovering the components of that entry point URL. And now once the service map established this single component, you will see the different attributes on the right or the properties that gives you a picture about this service map. And as you see the different steps which has been described at the bottom of this list, it shows the behavior of the top-down service map and is trying to tell us that the CI does not yet exist in the CMDB and the CI is now being added. And as we drill down to the service map itself, we can see on the behavior or the different logs which is happening behind the scenes. And this is one of the key points I'd like you to take notice. What you're seeing here on the left are all the applications which ServiceNow basically supports out of the box on the top-down discovery. And if you see a green color or checkbox, it means this is the pattern or the script that has run successfully and has been identified in the server or the CI which is currently being mapped. And all the yellows are being skipped, meaning as it tries to verify and ping the application inside the server as an example. And if it doesn't respond to the correct object, then it will just skip and test on the next specific application or pattern. And in this example, it has specifically identified that it is a web server running on Windows. And one of the key strengths of this pattern-based map, as long as the application is supported by ServiceNow, then the service or the CI will automatically be created for you inside ServiceNow. And if it's not there, then you would have to create the pattern or modify it to ensure that it will map and recorded to its correct table. So if you're not familiar of the CMDB structure and tables in ServiceNow, I have added a video specific to it, which you'll find at the end of the screen. Now, as we go back to the service map, then let us go to the dependency view, which has been discovered. It will give you a picture of the full map. So if we start from the top, and this is the entry point that we have created, and it is a sort of like a grouping, and the URL starts basically on this level. And since our example is a single server, we have a single component of the service map, and right below it are the different attributes inside the Windows server. So now it will make sense for those of you who understand the structure of an application. You will have a web server, which is basically switch on inside an operating system. And inside the operating system, you have the different components like the disk partition, network adapters, and so on. And from this dependency view, we are now navigating and drilling down to the configuration item or inside the CMDB. And as we navigate to the URL, you will see the table name, which is the CMDB CI, and you will see the type, which is the web server. And as we scroll down, you will see the different components and attributes taken automatically from the CI itself. So ServiceNow is making your life very easy by taking all these attributes and configurations so you can track and identify and have a root cause analysis that will help you find any underlying errors or misconfiguration on that specific CI. And you can see also here that this web server is running within the Windows servers. And as we navigate back to the dependency view, let us now drill down to the Windows server where basically the web server is basically initiated. And now you will have full components and the attributes of this specific. And as we drill down or scroll down, You will see the related items, which are also pictured out in the dependency view. And depending on how big your application is, ServiceNow has the ability to give you the network adapters and also the TCP connections. So meaning it will basically be able to show you what are the communications inside and outside of the server. So you can be doing a transaction from an entry point and going to a database server or a queuing server, depending on how your application is structured. These TCP connections will give you that behavioral architecture that will help you create that physical architecture and give you confidence of the full components of the service map. And this is also a primary source of machine learning. As more transactions are being done in your application, it automatically detects from one component to the other. And now AI and ML will come in and that will help you establish that full service map. And now let us step back and put the pieces together. First, we saw the types of mapping, the tag-based, machine learning suggestions, and top-down. Each has its own role, but top-down is the method of choice when accuracy is non-negotiable. Then we walk through the discovery flow from entry point to host detection, reconciliation, identification, and connection verification. We then look at credentials, the foundation that enables automation. If there's no credentials, then there will be no discovery. And finally, we reviewed candidate entry points, the building blocks that tell the system where to start its mapping journey. This end-to-end process turns chaos into clarity. It transforms thousands of servers and apps and endpoints into an organized, accurate service maps that you can trust, and that's the power of service mapping. If you found this walkthrough helpful, give this video a thumbs up, join as a member, and subscribe for more content like this. Share it with your team so they can understand how mapping really works. And let me know in the comments which mapping method do you want me to demo. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.